Yes.
It's a bit of that.
Oh, yeah, that's what it is. That we are the.
Yeah. Well, that's the awkward explanation of my intro out of the way. Let's have a quick look at Saturday's front pages. The Daily Mail leads with Rishi delivers speech Britain needed to hear. The Guardian has democracy is at threat from extremists, claims Sunak. The Times leads with banish this hatred from our streets, implores the Prime Minister. The Telegraph has democracy under threat. The Financial Times Weekend has OpenAI sued by Musk for breaking word. And the Daily Star has why the long face. That's about a farting police horse. And those were your front pages. And let's have a closer look at those front pages, starting with the Telegraph, Lewis.
Yeah, good news. Democracy under threat. This is what Rishi Sunak has given a speech. He's given the equivalent. He gave a speech in front of number 10 Downing Street about the threat that's going on to democracy and terrorism and all that stuff. It's like I'm gonna write a very sharp letter. What is that saying with English people?
Like it was written by disgruntled of Tunbridge Wells.
Yes, like it's disgruntled in Tunbridge Wells.
And he seems very disgruntled at George Galloway getting elected.
Yes, which he basically brought on himself. The point is that this guy, Rishi Sunak, nothing personal. I listened to the speech, or maybe the first few minutes of it, and it's the same thing that he's been saying or should have been saying, but he hasn't acted on it, and now he's saying it. There were like riots in the street. And the final thing, the most important thing is that there was a man shouting in the street the entire
I'm so
time
glad I was going to ask, did anybody hear that and what was going on? I was hoping like maybe it's a policeman shouting something important that he has to do. But no, I think it was just a nutter heckling our Prime Minister.
And that says everything you need to know about the Prime Minister. He couldn't even turn, and we say, "Would you shut that guy up?"
So he wants, a more civilised Britain, a Britain where we're united values and stuff. But all the while he's calling for that, an extremist is screaming abuse at him.
It's alleged at this point. We'll have to go back over the footage. Yes, he says, we must draw a line. I think he should draw a line. He is the Prime Minister.
He should have just done something.
Well, the thing is, if he says he wants to stop extremism, if he uses the same method he used to stop the boats, extremism is going to explode. There's going to, no pun intended, there's going to be like 20 times as many extremists as there were, which is actually what's going to happen.
People here have been very today in the channel. People have been very positive because he said all the right things. He's told the police to take a harder line with protesters. Well, everybody wants that. Yeah. But I just felt the tone of it was very reserved.
Yeah, and also he, sort of praised diversity, but also hinted that multiculturalism isn't working, and we all need to be united under one value, like the American system, where everybody's equal under God, and everybody becomes an American. You don't stay in your own siloed, ghettoized culture when you.
Well, we are not allowed to say that multiculturalism hasn't worked, because what people think of multiculturalism, what they really mean is everybody getting along. But that's not what multiculturalism is. Is like you said, in America, everybody in theory becomes an American. And here, you can't have groups of people that hate the town next door. That's what happened during the Angles and the Saxons' time, and look what happened there.
Yeah, but I mean, at least the Angles and the Saxons shared, root basic values. I mean, what we've got now.
They did, but they didn't share the values with the Britons who were already living there, and the Britons were forced to the nether reaches of Wales and Cornwall, and so this country was completely taken over by the Angles and the Saxons.
Yeah, but that's who we are now. I mean, I think
what he's saying is in 2,000 years or 3,000 years, it'll all be history anyway, which is a very philosophical point for Lewis Schaefer.
So in 1,000 years, we'll be an Islamic caliphate and nobody will be able to complain.
That's exactly where his point goes.
No, that isn't where my point goes. Where my point goes is that English people who are sitting here all smug and saying this is our country should remember when they took over this country.
Oh, this is an absolute nonsense argument, Lewis. I hear this so many times, always from the Owen Jones types. We should have open borders because here we've always had mass immigration. No, we haven't.
We have, but we've also had massive violence.
No, we haven't. We have not had 1.4 million people coming to this country in a year.
But my point is, it's never happened peacefully.
It's absolute nonsense.
No, I'm not arguing with that.
At most tens of thousands.
Okay,
and also those people tended to come from countries countries that were nearby, so weren't a huge cultural difference.
Okay.
And, you know...
I denounce what you're saying, because you're saying I denounce it. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that when the Angles and the Saxons moved into Britain, okay, and they swamped this country and they forced the native people out of most of the country.
Yeah.
Okay?
Well, I'm not... If we're going to get into Angle and Saxonophobia, I think we're a few centuries too late. Anyway, next up, we've got the Financial Times Weekend, Cresta. What have they got?
OK, OpenAI sued by Musk for breaking word. So Elon Musk has sued OpenAI, who I think he used to be... He was one of the founders, right, or the founder in 2015, I think, something like that. And this company is now branched off, so there's now two sections to this company. Originally, he said he wanted it to always be its original mission of building artificial intelligence systems for the benefit of humanity. And he's now accusing the people who are currently running it of just wanting to turn it into a business and make profits.
Yeah, imagine that, a company wanting to make money. I mean, Elon Musk seems to quite like money as well, given that he paid himself, a 50 billion dividend.
He must have known this couldn't... It's not the kind of thing that you get, and you will look after it, won't you, lads? Like, I mean, it's a very, very powerful product.
No, it is all about money. The reason, and not all about it, but Elon Musk put in $44 million of his own money.
Yeah.
Granted, it's just chump change for him, but he put it in, and now Microsoft paid $13 billion for it. So he probably, this is my guess, he wants some of the money that he invested, and this is a ploy to get it.
So he's trying to get some of the money back. It could also be from the, you know, he's got strong beliefs about freedom of speech and about fairness. And we've seen in other AI systems when they're coded, they've bias coded into them. So if you search for say, example, the Anglo-Saxons that you're talking about, they come back as sub-Saharan. Anglo-Saxons.
I searched for Lewis Schaefer the other day. I said, show me Lewis Schaefer, and you were a black lady. A quiet one, no less.
You at a party in 1992.
No.
Is that true? Because they have said that I've been on the BBC many times.
Yeah.
AI.
They should redo this headline, though. It says, OpenAI sued by Musk for breaking word. I assumed that OpenAI was now the technology behind that little paperclip that pops up, and it had broken word somehow, but no.
Oh, it broke word. Oh, breaking word, the word thing.
The word document.
The document. You do that several times a week.
Maybe that's what they meant. That's a good joke.
Thank you for saying it's a good joke. Moving on to the Mirror, Lewis. What have they got on the front?
Well, they got the front page. Good news. I don't know how long I can continue to do that and make myself laugh.
-7 times.
-7. I got to go back in time. Anyway, thank you, Cressida. Jerry's text turmoil. This is a showbiz inclusive. It's in the Mirror. It's about Jerry Halliwell, whose boyfriend, Christian Horner, was texting one of the girls in the office, I think, one of the women in the office.
Just like you.
Just like me. And you can't do that anymore. So, and she felt very put upon by, it was very embarrassing and humiliated. But the truth is, let's be honest, men are pigs. I hate to say it. I know that's against my trope.
That's the bigotry of low expectation, Lewis, and you should expect more from people.
I don't. I know men.
You know one man.
I'm always saying that women are horrible.
Yeah.
But you have to remember how horrible men are, too. Anyway.
Oh, yeah, the worst thing about this story seems to be that he was trying to cheat and then got pulled up by the company HR department, and they dug through his messages and he didn't actually get to put it in.
Horrible.
I
feel so bad for her that this is front page news. I hope that there's some cynical underplot and actually she's making money out of this.
Do you know something? I mean, women, first of all, she stole him away from his wife.
Is that true?
Oh.
Yes, I think
cheater is always
If they'll do it with you, they'll do it to you.
They'll do it to you. That's interesting. Okay, great phrase. And the truth is, I know about being extremely humiliated because I've seen my wife's face. You know, my ex-wife, when she was so embarrassed with me.
I can't believe that.
You know what? I didn't think so. I thought I was like a totally legitimate person. Now, all right.
Well, look at you now. You've got a suit. You're on television.
I had a suit then. I looked even better then. I looked better.
Unbelievable.
She was fooled by me. She should have done her research.
OK, let's finish this section with a star, Cressida. What have they got?
OK, why the long face? Cops deploy giant 6'2" farting horse to wipe smile off thugs' mushes. and that's more or less all we know about this. So there's a horse that eats a lot.
I assume there's a full 48-page in-depth analysis.
I wish we had the whole story. We'll just have to guess. It's some kind of, I think it's like some kind of security horse. There's a person in high-vis riding it, and apparently it's making life miserable for yobbos in Greater Manchester.
Yeah, it sounds like that horse is itself guilty of breach of the ring piece.
And the thing is, I think this horse is one of those kind of like shyer horses that were like good for pulling.
Doesn't look that shy.
Whatever. Don't make the jokes. It's the same beer. The Anheuser-Busch, the Clydesdales.
Yeah,
exactly. So it just probably reminds the yabos about drinking.
OK, right. Well, that's the front pages done. Join us in a moment for the fallout from George Galloway's seismic Rochdale election win and Islamophobic Iranians. See you in a couple of minutes.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Lee Anderson's Real World. Fridays from 7 p.m.
Dr. Jane Jones, who's the clinical lead for Care After Combat. Yep. Jane, thanks for coming. And just tell me a little bit about your organisation. What do you do?
OK, well, thank you for having me here so we can talk about Care After Combat. So we are an organisation, a charity, who work into the prison system, working with military veterans who've somehow got involved with the justice system and...
So there's quite a high population of ex-servicemen and women in our prisons. Why is that, do you think?
So 2014, the government did a review of who was resident in UK prisons, and what they found were that military veterans are the highest occupational group, and this obviously raises some concerns. Yeah. So the government wanted to do something about that, and so they supported Care After Combat initially just as a scoping exercise, really, to see if there was any way we could help these men and women actually, understand the problems that led to offending behaviour and go on to lead successful lives.
So what sort of offending behaviour are we talking typically for people that's in prison that's actually served in our armed forces?
Primarily, it's violence.
Yeah.
So that is the highest offence that we work with.
Okay.
But of course, the military, as with everybody else, it's the full range of offender behaviour.
OK, so we're in a pub, Jane, Dr. Jane, and I guess for some people, the odd tip of alcohol is good, a bit of fun of a weekend, relax, let your hair down. But for some people, alcohol is not always their best friend, and I guess that plays a part in some of your veterans that end up inside.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, speaking from my own experience, a good 2/3 of the people I work with have some kind of mental health problem or mental health difficulty, struggling to either adapt into civilian life or with some of the traumas they've experienced during service. People might self-medicate with alcohol to manage some of those thoughts and feelings.
Yeah. Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Leo Curse, still here with Lewis Schaefer and Cressida Wetton. Kicking off this section with The Independent, and Jews are worried as Muslims elected George Galloway in Rochdale. To be fair, it's not the worst thing Muslims have done in Rochdale, Lewis.
I think Rochdale's it was probably bad before they even arrived. The whole place was horrible.
That was beautiful.
I'm guessing.
Was it? I mean, it's still beautiful.
Well, I don't even know what Rochdale... I know it's in the northern Manchester.
Just tell us the story.
They'll tell you the story. Dark day for the Jewish community as Labour apologises for the for George Galloway by-election. Dark day. Listen, there's going to be a lot of bad days for the Jews coming, so this is not the worst one. But so what happened is George Galloway, who I have met, I did a show with a guy, and he was so nice to me. We discussed football in this country, and he's from roots.
He's very charming and charismatic.
Like he's a politician.
Very charming. And when they eventually, throw me off of the building for being gay. which I am not gay, but they'll maybe say I am just to throw me off. It's not because he was a Jew, it's because he was annoying. George Galloway. You've got to stop me. I'm going off on a tangent. You too.
No, I'm enjoying it, but do tell us the story.
The story is what happened is up in Rochdale is the Labour candidate said something untoward.
Yeah, anti-Semitic.
Possibly anti-Semitic. Let's just say it wasn't. But let's say it was. And Labour had to take him off the ballot. And by Labour taking him off the ballot, they gave George Galloway a free ride.
Labour had no candidate, effectively.
Yeah, I think we're going to just have to put that in a box that he may be anti-Semitic. I mean,
yeah.
He said that Israel were complicit in the attacks on October the 7th. Not on.
Yeah.
So anyway,
No,
carry on.
you know
I have to
something?
push back on that.
He should be the one pushing back.
Well, they let me talk sometimes too, so
Yes,
I'm having
okay.
a go.
Thank you for pushing back.
Yeah.
Maybe you should be the
Just tell us what the...
So now can I just say this?
You probably will.
We don't know if Israel was or was not.
Listen, that's getting away from the point.
Don't
So
start
Keir
that.
Starmer,
Look,
Keir
the story
Starmer
is,
said now.
So Keir
Starmer's
Starmer
apologised.
Get a 3-year-old to read the
He
news.
basically apologized because they didn't give the Labour they didn't have a Labour candidate. But
Yeah.
it's his fault for picking that Labour candidate. It was his fault for letting this guy be the Labour candidate. So he was right to apologize. But I think it basically told the world there's problems in these kind of communities.
Yeah, and
These kind
Cresta,
of
what do you think about the Galloway election win? Because, you know, a lot of people have said, I mean, Rishi seems outraged by it. He says it's going to foment all this fear and all this extremism.
As outraged as Rishi gets. Yeah, one of the things I wonder is, when he goes back to work, as it were, is he going to be shunned in Parliament? Is he going to be sort of... I don't think he's going to be very popular.
I think he's used to that.
Well, right,
Yeah.
so it doesn't bother him. He just carries on regardless. And
And there will be enough. I remember he's Scottish, and there's probably the SNP who's going to probably take his side. And he is very charming.
They're not on the same side.
They're not on the same
I mean,
side.
I guess on some issues they would be.
Well, you know what? I can't imagine the SNP doing anything that would make me happy. But I don't know why I said that, because I don't even know what they do, and I'm not political. But I think...
we've got a story coming up about Porridge later, actually. That...
Oh, well, that...
Anyway, sorry, I don't want to get off topic.
Don't get off topic. But so...
Somebody get this back on topic.
Yeah.
What is the point here? So it's a dark day for the Jewish community, yes or no? Well, yeah, it's not good,
The
is
whole
it?
thing's... Right, sorry.
Well, I think it could be a good day for the Jewish community, because George Galloway is going to go into Parliament, and yes, he could be offensive. Who knows what extreme things he's going to say, but he's going to be a conduit for the people who elected him, and he's going to reveal. He's going to bring light.
So this is another example
everybody.
of the benefit of freedom of speech. Get it out in the open. Let's hear everybody's views, then we know what they are.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Moving on, we've got The Guardian now, and Iranians are refusing to vote in an election rigged to elect hardline Islamists. Sounds like Iranians are Islamophobic, Lewis.
It does sound that, because this is Iran, and 27% of the population of Iran didn't. Only 27% voted in the big elections that they're having, and only 12% in Tehran, which is the capital metropolitan type city.
Yeah.
Which tells you that the people didn't want to vote. The reason they didn't want to vote is because every candidate that runs has to be vetted and chosen and selected by the Guardian Council of the Islamic State. And they vote test. They vote. They don't vote, which is their protest, which tells you that people in Iran do not like the government. And the reason this is so important is because Iran is the nexus of evil around the world, or they're being accused of it. They're basically, in Sherlock Holmes, they're the Moriarty of countries.
Well, and on a note that's relevant to us, Cressida, I mean, in 1979, Iran was a relatively open, prosperous and tolerant country. Then it had an Islamic revolution in which Marxists, left-wing people, and Islamists marched side by side, just as we're seeing in the UK right now, and they brought in this Islamic theocracy, and then suddenly the workshops for queer youth that had been promised to the leftists didn't materialise.
Not a lot of them, even lower turnout than for voting. Yeah, great point. And do you know what I find fascinating about this is that people are allowed to not vote. I've got an Australian friend, but she gets fined if she doesn't turn up and vote.
Yeah, because Australia is a police state, anti-democracy.
It's the only country. It's the only country that's actually stricter and more authoritarian than Iran.
Well, it turns out, so they could take a leaf out of Australia's book. But yeah, that's fascinating to me that they're allowed to stay home, and it's really it's very clear what the people think, isn't it, by their absence?
Absolutely. Well, we've got the Telegraph now, and a Tory MP has been accused of racism. I assume he said something totally common sense, Cressida.
Tory accused of fanning racism over traveller site opposition says he won't be silenced. So this guy, Sir Conor Burns, he's the Bournemouth West MP, and there's proposals to put a traveller site on a car park in a residential area in his constituency. And surprise, surprise, his constituents aren't very interested in this, and so he said so. He says it's inappropriate to put it in the middle of a residential area. And, of course, he's being told that this is inciting discrimination against the traveller community. But he's just not backing down. He says, I will not, however, be silenced from raising legitimate issues on behalf of my constituents.
Yeah.
So that's his position.
Yeah, and it seems like, I mean, the people who find his stance problematic or racist or whatever, why don't they put the traveller community next to their house?
Well,
because then everybody's happy.
A large part of it is the traveller community, so they don't have a house to put themselves in.
Right.
That's one of the problems.
No, but they did say that they did say they were settled. I don't want to get involved in this because this is one more group of people that I'm going to probably alienate by saying the wrong thing. I think communities should have a right to what gets built in their town.
Yeah.
Whether it's in Bournemouth or like in my place, which is Southwark, and so they let the council do whatever they want. They shouldn't let the council just put buildings in the thing. And the people should say, we don't want it. And that's all this Congress
Yeah, but the problem with that is if somebody's already got a house and they're trying to block... I appreciate this isn't about housing, but they're trying to block other people coming into the area just because they got there first. But they only own their bit. They don't own that and that. They just own what they own. Yeah. So you can't... I don't know. Yeah,
but people... I mean, if you apply for planning permission, you have to take into account the views of neighbours.
And so, why should the council give away land to anybody, whatever their ethnic group is?
Yeah.
I'm against that.
Makes absolute sense. Anyway, we've got The Guardian now with some good news about our population decline. We can shut schools and save the taxpayers some money, Lewis.
Yeah, good news. And because this is a story about London's... It says London's secondary school applications are down by 4,000 after falling birth rate. We have a new cup. It's going to look a bit like this. It says the death of love, and that's what's happening in the world. They don't want us to have children. They don't want us to get married. So I'm going to give it to you.
A death of love mug to join the other ones on the shelf. What a beautiful mug.
Who's the little
girl
girl on the mug?
It's some girl from...
this looks like a sort of 80s album cover, but in a mug.
It's the death of love.
Anyway.
Wait, didn't I give you a cup already?
You gave me a mug. You gave me a Team World mug.
Cup, Lewis?
I gave you a Team World.
I drank out of it.
All right, you know
today.
what? I'll give you the mug.
Thanks.
That's for you.
Can you tell us about these schools?
The schools there's been a drop of applications for 4,000 places in secondary schools. I don't know how old the secondary school people are. What are they, like?
11 to 18.
11 to 18.
11 to 16, I guess.
11 to 16. And so that's good news because it means that there aren't going to be able to get the places for their kids. But it's also, I think, the reason why they're putting this in the newspaper. It says, hey, don't worry about mass immigration. Yeah. Because there's still plenty of places. But the truth is all the people who are coming in are young men, and they're going to bring their wives and families. So in about 5 years,
and a huge portion of the babies being born here are, born to people who've come from overseas, which is wonderful and a huge strength to the country. But, you have to wonder. You have to wonder if it's such a sensible idea to have such rapid demographic change in a country in such a short space of time.
The Guardian is saying this is down to birth rates, but it might also be that people just want to go and live in Essex because there's more space. I mean, that's a legit concern, isn't it? Lots of people move out to breed.
Yeah, and also people, they talk about birth rates, but maybe people would have more children if they could afford houses, and maybe houses would be cheaper if we didn't keep bringing people into the country and having to spend money housing them and use up our housing stock like that. Just a theory.
It's a possibility.
Can I just tell you something? I don't agree with you.
Okay, good.
I don't want to let the people, because people are going to see me sitting here, they're going to sit, and they're going to think, oh, this guy Lewis Schaefer is just like Lee. I do agree with you. But for the sake of the show. No, we don't know. We don't know. It might turn out amazing. It doesn't look like it's turning out amazingly, but it might turn out...
Well, you know what? It's going to be fun to watch.
Yes.
It's going to be fun. Maybe not so much for you, but for the rest of us, it's going to be fun. Anyway, we've made it halfway. Stay with us to find out how foreigners owe the NHS 180 million and how it could soon be illegal to say that men have penises and women have vaginas. See you soon.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
The EU rules are trying to choke even that. And I just think, I would join this protest in a heartbeat. And you are right to point out the stuff about them being right-wing. How dare they slate them as right-wing when these are real people whose livelihoods
And
are
remember, a
being
lot of
trashed.
people who work in the farm industry, Malone, get paid very little money.
They get paid,
Agricultural workers are very badly paid.
They get paid nothing, Pierce. And, the profits... I think on Clark's Farm, I read somewhere that I saw that when you sell it like a sheep's skin, it's 30 pence or something.
Right.
And you say, what?
Yeah.
And so you wonder how they can manage that. And I think after a year, Clarkson made a handful of pounds.
He made like 90 quid profit or something.
In a whole year working.
But Carol makes a really good point, though, doesn't she, Nikki, about this idea that we go to the supermarkets, we shop there, we eat our food, we don't often give it a thing. And the farmers have become so frustrated by this idea that they are not respected.
Absolutely. I mean, they're running what are effectively small businesses, often family businesses that have been passed down through generations. They also tend to know the land and the animals better than anyone else in those areas. I am all for green protests, I'm all for climate change activism, but actually... the only way you can do that is gradually. It's exactly what we've seen with Port Talbot. You can't just go in and say, you're not going to do it anymore this way. You've got to do it this way instead. The Tartar Steel thing. Yes, exactly. Yeah. You've got to do it this way instead. Lots of farmers are on board with protecting the planet, but they can't do it overnight. You've got to give them time. So they're protesting, they're saying no farmers, no food.
When
well,
you
it
say
can't
you
get any more
support some of
obvious.
these environmental protests, you're not one of these closet supporters of Just Stop Oil, are you?
I'm not a closet supporter. I think I've been quite open about Just Stop Oil.
No.
I don't like all their methods, but I do like the message.
Any of them.
But I do appreciate the message. But sometimes you've got to do difficult things.
What they're asking for now, those protesters, are unrealistic. What these protesters are asking for is not unrealistic.
No.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. The Guardian now, and another historic British building is going to get pulled down, Cressida.
M&S wins court challenge to Gove's block on raising of Oxford Street store. So M&S have won. Michael Gove didn't want their plans to go ahead. They've got a store. They want to pull it down and start again and build a new one.
Yeah, so that's raising with a AZ rather than AIS.
Not up. Flatten it. And people very much like Lewis, came along and said, no, it's old and beautiful. Reuse what you've got.
Just like Lewis.
Yes. Just like Lewis.
I know, it's a bit inconsistent.
And people complained about it, just like Lewis, including Mr Gove. So Gove said his intention, which was contrary to the recommendation from the inspector. Inspectors had already said, no, you've got to let them do what they want to do. It had all been agreed. And Gove comes along and thinks he's got better ideas and causes lots of unnecessary, expensive delays, which, of course, he didn't have to pay for. This is all on the developer. Was it M&S?
Oh, like you care about the developer.
Well, I do, actually, because I think there's something odd about a system where you can complain and cause all these problems for somebody trying to run a business. And it's at no... Well, ultimately, it's a cost to the taxpayer, actually. I'm assuming you feel differently about this.
Well, I totally do. I mean, the thing about this country is when I'm living in America, and America's filled with, new, ugly stuff, and I say, I want to move to Britain, which is filled with old, ugly stuff. And that's the whole point. That's why I moved here. I'm an old guy, and I thought, this is the place for me. I am against tearing down any buildings. It's not for Marks and Spencer to tear down a building. You know who it's for? It's for the Germans. When they bomb again, there'll be enough room for buildings things to be, there are a lot empty spaces when the Germans are coming back. They are coming back.
There's nothing wrong with planning. I agree with you. Planning law, fine. But the point is, they'd already been through all of that, and then Gove comes along and says, "No, I just want to do my own thing."
Well, you can't trust planning law. It is the most absolutely corruptest part of local government. I'm guessing. I'm not saying because I fought planning in Southwark. What they were doing were building on parks. They build on Peckham Green. They're building right now.
Cemetery as well, I believe.
They're not building on the cemetery. They want to remove all of the headstones, and they want to cut down all the trees so they can plant rows of, and they're doing it. Just destroying this not ancient.
God, so people can have somewhere to live. I mean, as somebody trying to get on the property market, this is a slightly different perspective.
It is not going to provide you with any ounce. And what I would suggest you do is you find a handsome, older man, lower your standards a little bit.
Would that be a really poor one?
Your problem is you're a pretty girl, you've got high standards.
Well, we'll see if we can find any handsome older men later on. But we've got the Mail now, and people from other countries have been flying into Britain to use the NHS for free. Not just Lewis, and it's cost us £180 million. Surely this should come out of our foreign aid budget.
No, this is over 5 years. So this is so much for the crackdown on health tourists. NHS hospitals have lost a staggering £180 over the last 5 years.
£180 million.
£180 million, sorry. What's
inflation?
Wasn't. The point is, that's only like £30 million a year. That's chump change for the NHS wastes billions. It's all a waste. It's probably way more than that because it says that the NHS doesn't even ask people for money.
Well, this is what I was going to say. Like, how do they even know? How do they know? Because they're only catching the people. I agree with you that is chump change, but the true figure is going to be vastly more. Because there's going to be people flying in and then saying, you know what, I'm not from that country. I'm British. In a strange accent.
Absolutely. I wouldn't trust these figures at all. And, you know, it reminds me that whenever people are campaigning to fund a particular illness, they never think, like, and you're taking that from somewhere else, you know. And I'm not saying I've got the right answers, but that's the job of NICE, isn't it? You know, that organisation, they have to decide this is worth it, that isn't. Sorry, everybody doesn't get it. And this kind of brings that to light, doesn't it? We don't have infinite resources.
Well, we could have infinite resources if we let independent hospitals be independent businesses and we didn't have NICE and we let let insurance companies, like they do in America.
Have they got infinite resources in America?
No, but they don't. And they tell people, I'm sorry, we're not going to provide that. Like this Ozempic is going to kill the economy. Ozempic, that's the weight loss thing.
Not exactly sure what tangent that went
and
off.
we don't even need hospitals.
We've got the Mail again. We do need hospitals. We've got the Mail again, and too many Brits are self-diagnosing with autism. I mean, no wonder. Being unable to make eye contact and being anxious about social situations, that's just describing every British person, Cressida.
That's right, unless we've had a few drinks. NHS can't cope with surge in Brits self-diagnosing with ADHD and autism, expert warns. So everyone's on TikTok seeing that, it says in here that being a flirt is supposed to be like a sign of bad judgment or something. The point is the symptoms are not that... They're not that unusual. So en masse, people want a rubber stamp diagnosis, so they're all getting in the queue. And there's been a 9-fold increase since 1998 in autism, which, you know, presumably there really hasn't been a 9-fold increase, I think is what the article's implying.
Yeah. A lot of people just lived with it before without getting diagnosed.
Well,
and now also with the ADHD, I've seen this in my friends. It's become very trendy in the comedy community to have ADHD. Number one, so that if you're a straight white guy, you've got something that makes you a bit special. You can tick a box in an Arts Council funding form. Number two, if you get diagnosed with ADHD, and it's very easy to get diagnosed with ADHD because everybody basically has ADHD, then you get prescribed medical grade speed paid for by the NHS.
Yes, exactly. It's Ritalin. And it's part of this whole self-identity. The problem is the two teams, Team World believes in self-identity. They believe if you're a woman and you call yourself a man, you can be a man. If you're call yourself mental, you could be mental, or as the kids say, I have mental health. That's what they say. I'm not mentally ill, I've got mental health. Is that it's about self-identity. And luckily I don't have to self-identify myself because so many other people I have a girlfriend who tells me I am these things. And she demands that I went to my doctor. And my doctor looked at me and says, you're depressed. and she prescribed citalopram.
And you were like, I'm not depressed. And she's like, well, you should be.
People around you are, but you're fine.
Your life is horrible, Lewis. Yeah.
OK, we've got another healthcare-related story here with the Express, with witch doctors scamming patients. They should be struck off the witch doctors register, Lewis.
Yeah, good news, good news. It says basically the quacks are promising impossible cures for cancer.
Yeah.
And they're charging up to £3,000. Impossible cures like prayer or astrology or voodoo, whatever. And the truth is, why are people going for these cures? Because the real cures don't cure. There's been no increase in cancer survivability diagnosis has been earlier, but chemo doesn't work.
Lewis, I'm going to push back on this because it sounds like copper-plated absolute beeswax. There has been an increase in survivability of a lot of cancers.
No, there's not. The major cancers, if you get pancreatic cancer, you're a goner.
Some cancers, I mean, pancreatic, that's Steve Jobs, I believe.
That's Steve Jobs.
I mean, it's very hard to detect.
Lots of the other ones, they detect them early and the people don't live any longer. I don't know what I'm talking about.
But you're saying, where you are right, is you're saying people get to a point of desperation and so they turn to these wrong-uns and part with huge amounts of cash because they feel they've got nothing to lose.
But to be honest, I've seen this happening. My cousin's a palliative doctor, just helping people sort of end. If they have terminal diseases, she helps them end their last months in a better way. And she was working as a locum for a Harley Street doctor, and they were dealing with people with terminal illnesses and upselling inappropriate treatments. And obviously, when you've got a terminal illness and lots of money, you're desperate and you'll chuck money at whoever promises, a slight chance of recovery.
Well, I am 67 years old, and I think about cancer every single day. And I've seen a lot of YouTube thumbnails about it. and I'm going to make an enemy here. I don't think medical doctors know any more than these quacks.
I think if I thought I had cancer, I'd be very interested to speak to a medical doctor.
Yeah, well, you know something? I would not be. Well, the only cure, the only way to prevent, preventing cancer is one thing, but stopping cancer is by reducing your glucose levels. Glucose feeds cancer, and if you eliminate glucose, the cancer cannot grow.
There's a certain amount of truth.
And
That's the first time I've heard you say something.
Is that true? You can go to @Lewis Schaefer at Twitter.
I mean, you won't eliminate cancer, but certainly you can cancer because it needs more nutrients. I mean, this is what Steve Jobs did. He essentially starved himself because the cancer starves first.
No, that's not what he did. He was on an all-fruit diet, which caused the cancer to grow. But you are right about that.
Okay, well, let's move on to something a bit cheerier. We've got the Telegraph now with Suella worried about plans to make it illegal to say boys have a penis, girls have a vagina. It'll also make kindergarten cop illegal, Cressida.
Suella Braverman fears she could be criminalised if trans conversion therapy is banned. So, she is a parent and she says that she teaches her kids that a boy can't become a girl and a girl can't become a boy. So there's potentially going to be new legislation that bans trans conversion therapy. So gay conversion therapy, we all know we don't want that. We don't want to try and convince people out of their sexuality. But if you have, say, an 8-year-old saying, I think I'm in the wrong body, it might be reasonable to say, shall we discuss that a bit before we start giving you any drugs or chopping anything off and so on. Yeah. And so the problem with this is that we could get to a point where therapy, talking about how you feel, could be illegal. I mean, it just sounds nuts, doesn't it?
It does. No pun intended.
Yeah. Well, it's saying that if a parent tells their child that you are not a boy, and the child says she's a boy, or he, whatever it is, that could be illegal. And I could see it coming. I was scheduled to do a gig, and one of the videos that I said, you know, jokingly, because of course I don't believe this, that you know, a man can't be a woman, because that's this self-identity question. And we're at a war. We're at a war between the people who believe in self-identity, which is Team World, and the people who don't, which is Team GB or Team whatever we are. And I'd like to think that they should be able to see it, but they can't see it. And we can't see what they say either. When they say stuff, I go, that's crazy. But maybe they're not crazy. One of us is crazy.
I know. I mean, I think everybody, we're sort of caught in this sort of Victorian politeness trap where we have to, if some bloke with a beard puts on a frock and says, I'm a woman, you've all got to be like, yes, she is a woman called Susan, and it's like, everybody knows. But
everybody doesn't know. They don't. Sorry.
That part of we hear a lot about that, don't we? Trans women getting into women's spaces and so on and so on. I appreciate that's a problem, but I don't think we hear as much about concerned parents of children trying to navigate this difficult space. And if it's the first time you've ever thought about trans stuff and you go and see an expert and actually they're an activist, that poor parent... And sometimes parents are told, if you don't do this, your child's likely to kill themselves. That's horrendous, given that it's not actually true. And that in something like, is it 80% of female to male trans are actually autistic, and so they need more... I might be slightly wrong about that, but the point is, to just say no discussion, it's just insane.
Absolutely.
But Crescent is right, but people do believe that about they're going to commit suicide, and that they are saving a life by, changing... the physical aspect.
When you watch some of these detransitioner videos, I watched one recently, Brianna Ivy with Candace Owens, it's absolutely heartbreaking. OK,
well, just one section to go. In a couple of minutes, we'll have Jerry... we won't have Jerry Halliwell, we covered that already. We'll have 1 billion obese people and a man who's eaten 34,000 Big Macs. They're separate stories. See you in a couple of minutes.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
Mike Freer joins me now. Mike, thank you very much for coming into the studio.
Thank you for inviting me.
Firstly, how are you?
It's been a busy day, and it's been quite a traumatic experience. It's a real wrench to walk away from a job that you love, but also a constituency that you've become... I live there, it's my home, and I regard many of my constituents as friends, and it is an amazing place, and to walk away from that is really quite... it's quite an emotional wrench to think this was a job I loved, but unfortunately I can't do it anymore.
Can you talk me through the process? Because you mentioned about the alleged arson attack, etc., being the final straw, but this has been a really quite vile journey to get to this point. So what kind of threats have you had? What's that look like?
Well, like every MP, I mean, you day in, day out, you get abusive emails, you get low-level stuff that, whether we should accept it, but we do, it's graffiti, it's things like, in the past I've had a mock Molotov cocktail left on the office door, meaning we had to evacuate the whole building. I've come out of my house and found a note on my car. Where I live is common knowledge, but what I drive is less so. And it's a few weeks after John Mann had the wheel nuts on his car tampered with. So that all kind of makes you get a bit, what on earth's going on. But I've had 2 run-ins with the organisation that was Muslims Against Crusades, and people like Anjem Chowdhury, who was behind that organisation, been to prison. But online it said, I used to do surgery in mosques, so I wanted to go out and see people. And online there's a picture of me saying, you're not welcome in our mosque, like Stephen Timsby, a pointed reminder. So it's not very subtle.
Well, just for our viewers and listeners who might not remember that,
Stephen Timms, of course, was stabbed by a woman who'd been radicalised. Thank heavens he survived. So it was a very unsubtle.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. We've got the Mail now, and the Scottish Government has classified porridge as an unhealthy junk food. Who better to tell us about this madness than the only person who probably agrees with it? Lewis.
I do agree with it. I agree with it totally. Totally. So it is good news. It's SNP under fire after the Scottish Government lists junk foods to be subject to supermarket promotion ban and includes porridge. Because they think, oh, well, what is junk food? It's processed, it's heavily processed. It's sugary foods, or sodas and things like that. But the truth is that oats is 80% sugar.
Oats aren't 80% sugar. That's nonsense.
He won't make a distinction between simple sugars and carbohydrates. He's not having it. He won't separate them. We've had this conversation many times. Maybe what the Scottish government... Why don't I? I think what some of these products they're talking about, when you get the quick, on-the-go OT cereal bar breakfast things, and they often do have a lot of added sugar as well, don't they? I wonder whether those are some of the products.
So would you explain to the people, OK, why oats are just as bad as regular sugar?
No, because we've argued about this so many times. Oats are still a slower release of carbohydrate than a simple sugar.
It's got a low glycemic index, Lewis. That's a word I learned.
But glycemic index doesn't take into account fructose. It just measures glucose, which eventually turns into fructose, which raises uric acid, which causes gout and a million other diseases.
Anyway, should a government be telling people what to eat? Do you agree with that?
There you go. Well, yeah, that's the second nail in the head. I agree with that.
Well, if the government is going to tell people what to eat, and especially in Scotland, where the average kid's breakfast consists of a packet of chips and a menthol B&H, surely they should be allowing porridge as part of a... It's definitely, for a Scottish kid, it's definitely an improvement.
You know what? It isn't an improvement. It's really bad for you. And the way people prepare porridge, you know, the original Scottish people, as you know...
used to make it in a drawer.
They used to soak it for a week.
Yeah, and it was... and you'd have it in a drawer. Like a bedside... Yeah, fermenting, and you cut a slice off it. This genuinely... And it had salt in it to preserve it.
Winding me up.
There's incredible toxicity in oats. Stay away from oats. It's one of the worst foods you can eat.
Wow.
Don't listen to Lewis. Eat lots of oats.
I am a registered nutritionist.
He's not a registered...
And an oncologist.
The only register the only register he's on is not one to be proud of. Well, we've got the Sun now, and it looks like the drive to eradicate world hunger went a little bit too far, Cressida.
More than 1 billion people around the world are now obese and at risk of killer diseases, including 159 million children. So that's dreadful, isn't it? 30 years ago, in many poor countries, were starved thin, but in most places, they're now more likely to be overweight, experts have said. So I suppose this is because people can get calories, but they're not necessarily eating good ones. Wasn't there a push for Coca-Cola to be available in every country in the world at one point?
Yeah.
And that's supposed to have...
Because it's delicious.
Well, I'm full of sugar, but not full of protein.
Well, in America, you can get Coca-Cola on, food stamps. Like, the government gives out for the women and children. They used to just give out milk, but now they give out Coca-Cola.
Isn't this an amazing success of capitalism? Now people have an excess of food instead of starving.
Well, it is true, and it prepares us for the wintertime. We're all getting fat. Not you, but not even me. I look amazing. Maybe I look a bit heavy on TV, but
by the process of elimination, I'm fat.
But Nick Dixon, no. Sorry.
Oh, God. He lost a stone. He wants everyone to remember that.
The point is, the reason why people are fat is because we're not getting enough protein. We're a protein in our diets.
Okay.
So we have to eat extra food, and that extra food is very high in sugar.
I think people are getting more protein than they were. Well, we've got The Guardian now. Let's fit this one in with a man Lewis probably thinks is the best diet in the world.
Yes, this is good news. U.S. man extends record for most Big Macs eaten in a lifetime to over 3,400. This is a nutter. His name is Don Gorsk. I mean, he's not that much of a nutter because he's 70 years old. Does
he follow you on Twitter?
He's going to. Please follow me because I love this guy. He was a prison guard. He's a prison guard. He's been married all these years, but 50 years ago he had a Big Mac when it first came out. Basically. Maybe it came out in 1969 or 67 or something. And he said, this is delicious. And every single day he wrote down, he had Big Macs every single day, and he wrote down how many he had, and he saved the boxes, and he said... He's had 34,000 of these things.
Oh, my God.
I respect him. What have you kept track of?
Absolutely nothing like that. this is about him living a long time. So he says many people thought I'd be dead by now because he's 70, but it also said he started skipping the fries and walking 6 miles a day. He's like a postman. He's just walking it all off.
This is a super fit guy who just has a bit like the healthy bit of the Big Mac every once in a while. Anyway, the show is nearly over, so let's take another quick look at Saturday's front pages. The Daily Mail leads with Rishi delivers speech Britain needed to hear. The Guardian has democracy is at threat from extremists, claims Sunak. The Times has banished this hatred from our streets, implores Prime Minister. The Telegraph has democracy under threat, also about Rishi's speech. The Financial Times Weekend has OpenAI sued by Elon Musk for breaking word. That's breaking their word, not the Word document. The Daily Star has Why the Long Face. And those were your front pages. And that's all we have time for. Thank you to my guests Lewis Schaefer and Cressida Wetton. Andrew Doyle will be here tomorrow at 11 p.m. And if you're watching at 5 a.m, stay tuned for breakfast. Good night.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update with me, Annie, from the Met Office. There's further hail snow to come for northern areas throughout tonight and through Saturday, and it's going to be staying cold across the UK through the weekend. Low pressure's very much in charge. We've got some occluded fronts wrapped around that low pressure system, and that's where the focus for the heaviest rain will continue to be throughout tonight. So some persistent rain will turn to snow over parts of southern Scotland and then into northern areas of Scotland later on tonight. And then another batch of rain will push into southern areas of England, bringing a risk of some hill snow here. But anything that does start to accumulate should quickly melt as the temperatures rise after sunrise. But it will still be quite a cold start to the weekend wherever you are. Some quite persistent rain will continue across central and eastern areas of England and then to southern Scotland later on in the day. And we'll also see this rain turn to snow across the far north of Scotland, particularly over the Highlands through Saturday afternoon. There'll be quite a brisk northerly breeze across northwestern areas, bringing that chilly feel. And in fact, it'll actually still feel fairly cold out there for many areas. Turn drier throughout Saturday night, so it should be a much drier day on Sunday. There'll still be some mist and fog around and a few showers across western coasts, but I think it will feel much more pleasant in the sunshine with lighter winds and a bit more in the way of sunny and dry weather. However, across the east coast, there could be some rain moving in at times. It looks like it'll stay cold into the start of next week, but temperatures do start to rise from Tuesday onwards. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important